All right, welcome back to the C Files, folks. Thank you for joining me. We just finished up with Genesis chapter 19, and we'll be back in Genesis before too long. And what we do is I'll go through one out of each category of books in the Bible, one chapter. In this case, I do two out of the poetic books. Proverbs is a wisdom book, and then we'll be in Song of Solomon, more of a poetic book. They're in the same category. And then we'll move on to a prophet and then the gospel and then an epistle, doctrinal book. So we try to get a full diet of the scriptures in doing this. I know some people ask me, isn't that a little confusing doing it that way? I mean, I'm not doing systematic line upon line in the sense that I'm staying in the same book for a long period of time. That is true. And it might be a little confusing, but if you just follow the videos, I consistently go through the entire book before I go to the next one in that particular category. Our genre of books. So we're in Proverbs 10. This is the wise sayings of Solomon. So let's see what Solomon has to say. This is a little bit of a long one. The Proverbs of Solomon. A wise son makes a glad father, but a foolish son is the grief of his mother. And just, I go through these. I'm going to read through these kind of quickly, but just listen to what's being said. I don't have to comment on all of them. Comment in your own mind as you're hearing what's being said or think about, meditate on what's being read. I'll read it again. A wise son makes a glad father. Well, what does that mean? A wise son makes a glad father. Think about that in your mind. What would be considered a wise son? And why would a father be glad in having a wise son? You say, well, that's pretty obvious, but there may be some things that are not so obvious when it comes to these things. A wise son makes a glad father, but a foolish son is the grief of his mother. Treasures of wickedness profit nothing. Well, what would be treasures of wickedness? Gaining monetary gain in this world through fraud or through cheating people or whatever it might be. But righteousness delivers from death. The Lord will not allow the righteous soul to famish. The soul, not always the body, but the soul. But he casts away the desire of the wicked. Yeah, wicked desire is really a curse to a person. It's really a form of self-destruction. If you've ever watched someone go downhill because they have a desire for drugs or like meth or something like that, as an example, and you watch their body just rot away from the effects of that drug, but they are so hooked on that drug they can't, they can't seem to get away from it. It's an irrational desire, isn't it? It's a mental and a physical addiction. I mean, think about these words and something like that. He says, he cast away the desire of the wicked. Who has a slack hand? I'm sorry. He who has a slack hand, try it again. He who has a slack hand becomes poor. Slack hand, lazy, right? Don't want to work. But the hand of the diligent makes rich. He who gathers in summer is a wise son. He who sleeps in harvest is a son who causes shame. Blessings are on the head of the righteous, but violence covers the mouth of the wicked. Ever heard of anybody with a violent and vile mouth? The memory of the righteous is blessed, but the name of the wicked will rot. We know who Abraham is, but do we know any of the people that Abraham knew back in the day? How about some of his family in Canaan before God called him? Don't know who they are. Uh, the wise in heart will receive commands, but a prating fool will fall. He who walks with integrity walks securely. Yeah, because you can't accuse him of anything. Well, you can accuse him, but you can't. You'd have to falsely have a false witness against him to get anything on him. But he who perverts his ways will become known. Yeah, get caught. He who winks with the eye causes trouble, but a prating fool will fall. The mouth of the righteous is a well of life, but violence covers the mouth of the wicked. Hatred stirs up strife, but love covers all sins. Doesn't it, though? If you really, really love someone, you're going to stick with them through thick and thin. Wisdom is found on the lips of him who has understanding. But a rod is for the back of him who is devoid of understanding. You ever have to discipline a child because they're void of understanding? You ever had, I mean, they grow up, if they're still void of understanding, they end up in handcuffs in the back of a police car, right? Or worse. Wise people store up knowledge, but the mouth of the foolish is near destruction. How much time do we spend on the knowledge of God versus the ways of this world? The rich man's wealth is his strong city. The destruction of the poor is their poverty. The labor of the righteous leads to life. The wages of the wicked is sin. And what's the wages of sin? Death, according to Romans. He who keeps instruction is in the way of life, but he who refuses correction goes astray. Let me angle this just a slight bit, folks, and then bring this over so I can see the words a little bit better. There we go. Whoever hides hatred has lying lips, and whoever spreads slander is a fool. In a multitude of words, sin is not lacking, but he who restrains his lips is wise. The tongue of the righteous is choice silver. The heart of the wicked is worth little. The lips of the righteous feed many, but fools die for lack of wisdom. The blessing of the Lord the blessing of the Lord makes one rich, and he adds no sorrow with it. To do evil is like sport to a fool, but a man of understanding has wisdom. The fear of the wicked will come upon him, and the desire of the righteous will be granted. But the desires of the righteous are not self-destructive. That's the difference. When the whirlwind passes by, the wicked is no more, but the righteous has an everlasting foundation. As vinegar to the teeth and smoke to the eyes, so is the lazy man to those who send him. The fear of the Lord prolongs days, but the years of the wicked will be shortened. The hope of the righteous will be gladness, but the expectation of the wicked will perish. The way of the Lord is strength for the upright, but destruction will come to the workers of iniquity. The righteous will never be moved, but the wicked will not inhabit the earth. The mouth of the righteous brings forth wisdom, but the perverse tongue will be cut out. The lips of the righteous know what is acceptable, but the mouth of the wicked, what is per verse. And that is Proverbs chapter 10. So when you listen, you can pause the video, and when you hear one that kind of hits you, and just think about it for a moment, meditate on it. Open up your Bible and go along with me. I'm reading out of the New King James Bible. If you're in an ESV or Old King James or whatever you might be in, you should still be able to follow along as far as the verses go. All right, let me go to Song of Solomon. And as I recall, we're in chapter 2. And so we'll get started with chapter 2. Now, this is Solomon writing to one of his wives a song. And to put the music, and it worked in Hebrew. Okay, it was originally written in Hebrew, so it was poetic in Hebrew, maybe not so much in English. But there are different theories on the Song of Solomon. Some say it could be a metaphor of Christ in the church and so forth, but let's go ahead and read it for what it is and get the beauty of this psalm or this song. Chapter 2. I am the rose of Sharon and the lily of the valleys. Now the beloved says, like a lily among thorns, so is my love among the daughters. The Shulamite woman says, like an apple tree among the trees of the woods. So is my beloved among the sons. I sat down in his shade with great delight, and his fruit was sweet to my taste. The Shulamite woman to the daughters of Jerusalem. He brought me to the banqueting house, and his banner over me was love. Sustained me with cakes of raisins, refreshed me with apples, for I am lovesick. His left hand is under my head, and his right hand embraces me. I charge you, O daughters of Jerusalem, by the gazelles or by the does of the field. I think I read this before, so we'll do three also. By the gazelles or by the does of the field, do not stir up nor awaken love until it pleases. The beloved's request, the Shulamite. The voice of my beloved, behold, he comes, leaping upon the mountains, skipping upon the hills. My beloved is like a gazelle or a young stag. Behold, he stands behind our wall. He is looking through the windows, gazing through the lattice. My beloved spoke and said to me, rise up, my love, my fair one, and come away. For lo, the winter is past, the rain is over and gone, the flowers appear on the earth. The time of singing has come. The voice of the turtle dove is heard in our land. The fig tree puts forth her green figs, and the vines with the tender grapes give a good smell. Rise up, my love, my fair one, and come away. Oh, my dove, in the clefts of the rock, in the secret places of the cleft, let me see your face. Let me hear your voice. For your voice is sweet and your face is lovely. Her brothers. Catch us the foxes, the little foxes that spoil the vines, for our vines have tender grapes. To Shulamite, my beloved is mine, and I am his. He feeds his flock among the lilies. To her beloved, until the day breaks and the shadows flee away, turn, my beloved, and be like a gazelle or a young stag upon the mountain of Bether. And now we'll go into chapter. By night on my this is the Shulamite woman. By night on my bed I sought the one I love. I sought him, but I did not find him. I will rise now, I said, and go about the city in the streets and in the squares. I will seek the one I love. I sought him, but I did not find him. The watchmen who go about the city found me, and I said, have you seen the one I love? Scarcely had I passed by them when I found the one I love. I held him and would not let him go until I had brought him to the house of my mother and into the chamber of her who conceived me. I charge you, O daughters of Jerusalem, by the gazelles or by the does of the field, do not stir up nor awaken love until it pleases. The coming of Solomon, and now this is a Shulamite woman talking. Who is this coming out of the wilderness? Like pillars of smoke, perfumed with myrrh and frankincense, with all the merchants' fragrant powders. Behold, it is Solomon's couch, with 60 valiant men around it, of the valiant of Jerusalem. They all hold swords, being expert in war. Every man has his sword on his thigh, because of fear in the night. Of the wood of Lebanon, Solomon the king, he made himself a palanquin. He made his pillars of silver, its support of gold, its seat of purple, its interior paved with love. By the daughters of Jerusalem, go forth, O daughters of Zion, and see King Solomon with the crown, with which his mother crowned him on the day of his wedding, the day of the gladness of his heart. And when we get into chapter 4, the next reading, we'll be reading about the bridegroom praises the bride. And a beautiful, beautiful book this is. Different kind of book out of the Bible. The wonderful thing about the collection of 66 books in the Bible is the fact that they have such a wide variety and wide range of things that they talk about, from history to wisdom to poetry to prophecy to the life of Christ to the doctrines that are given to the church by the apostles and the apocalyptic books and so forth. We're going to be in a prophet, Daniel, and we will be in chapter 3. And this will be the image of gold. And remember, they are in captivity. Nebuchadnezzar is the king of Babylon. And Daniel is one of the prophets that went into captivity with them, with the nation of Israel and Judah. And so Nebuchadnezzar is about to have another dream. Nebuchadnezzar the king made an image of gold. No, he's not having a dream. He made an image of gold. This is going to be interesting. Nebuchadnezzar made, the king, made an image of gold whose height was 60 cubits and its width 6 cubits. He set it up in the plain of Dura in the province of Babylon. And King Nebuchadnezzar sent word to gather together the satraps, the administrators, the governors, the counselors, the treasurers, the judges, the magistrates, and all the officials of the provinces to come to the dedication of the image which King Nebuchadnezzar had set up. Um, he's the guy that would put his name on his planes, his buildings, his in the modern day. Nebuchadnezzar would be in neon lights flashing off the castle. That's kind of kind of who Nebuchadnezzar was at this point in time. So the satraps, the administrators, the governors, and the counselors, the treasurers, the judges, the magistrates, and all the officials of the province gathered together for the dedication of the image that King Nebuchadnezzar had set up. If he were alive today, he'd want to be on Mount Rushmore. Um, and they stood before the image that Nebuchadnezzar had set up. Then a herald cried aloud, to you it is commanded, O peoples, nations, and languages, that at the time you hear the sound of the horn, flute, harp, lyre, and psaltery in symphony with all kinds of music, you shall fall down and worship the gold image that King Nebuchadnezzar has set up. Idolatry. Here it is. And whoever does not fall down and worship shall be cast immediately into the midst of the burning fiery furnace. So at that time, when all the people heard the sound of the horn, flute, harp, and lyre, in symphony with all kinds of music, all the people, nations, and languages fell down and worshiped the gold image which Nebuchadnezzar had set up. Now we're going to learn about Daniel's friends disobeying the king. Therefore, at that time, certain Chaldeans came forward and accused the Jews. They spoke, it's like people accuse the Jews today, I guess, you know. They spoke and said to King Nebuchadnezzar, O king, live forever. You, O king, have made a decree that everyone who hears the sound of the horn, the flute, harp, lyre, and psaltery, and symphony, with all kinds of music, shall fall down and worship the gold image. And whoever does not fall down and worship shall be cast into the midst of the burning fiery furnace. There are certain Jews whom you have set over the affairs of the province of Babylon, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. These men, O king, have not paid due regard to you. They do not serve your gods or worship the gold image which you have set up. Then Nebuchadnezzar, in rage and fury, gave the command to bring Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. So they brought these men before the king. Nebuchadnezzar spoke to them, saying, Is it true, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, that you do not serve my gods or worship the gold image which I have set up? Now, if you are ready, if you're ready, at the time you hear the sound of the horn, flute, harp, lyre, and psaltery, in symphony with all kinds of music, and you fall down and worship the image which I have made, good. But if you do not worship, you shall be cast immediately into the midst of a burning fiery furnace. And who is the God who will deliver you from my hands? Oh, wrong question, Nebuchadnezzar. I think the real God heard that question. Uh, you see, they had, of course, he mentioned gods plural. There was the pantheon of gods, right? The hierarchy. Of course, Nebuchadnezzar had to be at the top of the pantheon. So, who is this God that was going to deliver them out of their hands? Well, he's about to find out who that God is. Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego answered and said to the king, O Nebuchadnezzar, we have no need to answer you in this matter. Whoa, that's a little brazen, talking to the king of basically the world at that time. If that is the case, our God, this is the God that's going to do this, Nebuchadnezzar. If that is the case, our God, whom we serve, is able to deliver us from the burning fiery furnace, and he will deliver us from your hand, O king. But if not, let it be known to you, O king, that we do not serve your gods, nor will we worship the gold image which you have set up. Well, boys, you get in the fiery furnace. Then Nebuchadnezzar was full of fury, and the expression on his face changed toward Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. He wasn't so pleased with them anymore. Just like today, when you speak truth, people aren't very pleased with you. He spoke and commanded that they heat the furnace 7 times more than it was usually heated. Why seven? God's perfect number. On the seventh day, God rested from his creation. We have a 7-day week. Why seven? Why do you suppose Nebuchadnezzar chose 7 times? Interesting question. And he commanded certain mighty men of valor who were in his army to bind Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego and cast them into the burning fiery furnace. Now, the thought of going into a burning fiery furnace, if it were me, I'd be shaking in my boots, folks. I'll just be straight with you. I don't like heat of that intensity, okay? It don't feel so good. Um, then these men were bound in their coats, their trousers, their turbans, and their other garments, and were cast into the midst of the burning fiery furnace. Cast in there. Therefore, because the king's command was urgent and the furnace exceedingly hot, the flame of the fire killed those men who took up Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. Well, they weren't supposed to be involved in this fiery thing, but God had other plans, didn't he? And these 3 men, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, fell down bound into the midst of the burning fiery furnace. How were they still bound? I mean, they would have burned the ropes right off their hands. I'm assuming it was ropes. Maybe it was iron clasp or something. Then King Nebuchadnezzar was astonished. You think? And he rose in haste and spoke, saying to his counselors, uh, did we not cast 3 men bound into the midst of the fire? Huh. They answered and said to the king, true, O king. Look, he answered, I see 4 men loose walking in the midst of the fire, and they're not hurt. And the form of the fourth is like the Son of God, and Son and God are capitalized. Now, how in the world would Nebuchadnezzar, before the incarnation of Christ, how would he know anything about the Son of God? Not a son of a god, like, the Greek gods, the son of the God. Huh. That had to be a divine revelation that pinged the mind of Nebuchadnezzar from God himself. God's going to deal with Nebuchadnezzar. Nebuchadnezzar praises God. Then Nebuchadnezzar went near the mouth of the burning fiery furnace and spoke, saying, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, servants of the Most High God, come out and come here. Then Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego came from the midst of the fire, and the satraps, administrators, governors, and king's counselors gathered together, and they saw these men on whose bodies the fire had no power. The hair of their head was not singed, nor were their garments affected, and the smell of fire was not on them. Nebuchadnezzar spoke, saying, Blessed be the God of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, who sent his angel and delivered his servants who trusted in him, and they have frustrated the king's word and yielded their bodies that they should not serve nor worship any god except their own God. Wow, that's a big change in Nebuchadnezzar. Therefore, I make a decree that any people, nation, or language which speaks anything amiss against the God of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego shall be cut in pieces, and their houses shall be made an ash heap, because there is no other God who can deliver like this. Then the king promoted Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego in the province of Babylon. Did you notice something about Nebuchadnezzar there? Very impulsive at certain times, and he swung from one extreme all the way over to the other extreme. From who's the God that's going to deliver you out of my hand to if you don't worship this God that delivered them out of my hand, I'm going to cut you up and destroy your house. This is the kind of guy that they were dealing with. So, I mean, sometimes when you read the scripture, I know I love getting into the theology and the little gold nuggets and the details of scripture. I enjoy that, but I also enjoy looking at the almost the psychology of the human side of the people in the scriptures. And Nebuchadnezzar had a very, very fascinating psychology to him. Um, if you, not, I mean, I don't mean psychology in the sense of going to a therapist to that degree, but I mean just a sense of who he was and his personality and who he was and how he responded and reacted to things. Very extreme, from one extreme to the other. I mean, he could have said, okay, everybody's got to worship, you guys don't mess with the God of the Jews, don't mess with them. But no, he had to add, I'll cut you up and take your house. So that's the kind of man he was. But I think he got the message out there. And I think that's probably what made him an effective secular type of leader, if you will. Not secular in the sense they had their own gods, but in the sense that he knew how to lead an empire because he put the fear of God into people. Do this or, things are going to happen, you know. So he had some ability there, some strength in there. But God's about to bring his strength down to nothing in chapter 4. But we'll wait for that. Yeah, chapter 4 is going to be really good, really interesting. And then he's going to confess something in chapter 4 that I believe Nebuchadnezzar became a believer in Yahweh. I mean, a true believer. So, anyway, we'll move on from there. So, we are at 33 minutes. That is 3 minutes beyond cutoff for these videos. So, thanks for watching. We're going to be jumping into the New Testament. Is that right? Yeah, New Testament in the next reading. So, I'll see you there on the other side of this video.